Good morning and welcome to Football League World TV. This is the debate show. My name's Ned Holmes. Today I'm joined by my colleagues Marcus Alley and Toby Warding from Football League World to talk about the EFL clubs that have been overachieving this season. Marcus, how are you doing this morning?
Yeah, very well, thanks, Ned. It's going to be interesting to talk about some teams that, I had no idea that they were going to perform this well at the start of the campaign. So, I'm looking forward to it.
And what about you, Toby?
Yeah, good, thanks. Again, I'm looking forward to this one. I think there's a lot we could have put forward here, so it's going to be sort of interesting to see who's coming out on top in this debate.
Absolutely. And before we get started, just a reminder, if you haven't already, head to the Football League World YouTube channel and click subscribe. And of course, to let us know your thoughts in the comments. We want to know who you think's overachieved or whether you think one of Marcus or Toby's suggestions is wider than mark. Also, just to say, if your team's mentioned, it's certainly by no means an insult. It's quite the opposite. It's a testament to just how much progress we think they've made this season. We're going to get started in the Championship. Marcus, coming to you first then. Huddersfield Town, your pick for Championship overachievers. Why is it the Terriers that get your pick?
Well, I think looking to make a pick for this list, you've got to look at the players individually at the squad and how I thought they would fare compared to how they've actually got on. I don't think anyone could have foreseen how effective Sorba Thomas was at the start of the season. That's something that I didn't see coming, which is maybe why I had them a little bit further down the table. Also just looking at their transfer business, I wasn't that enamoured with the signs of the likes of Lee Nichols, Tom Lees, Matty Pearson and Danel Sinani coming in on loan from Norwich. They've all proved to be crucial players, really. I didn't know that much about Levi Colwill, obviously the 18-year-old coming in from Chelsea. They've formed a really decent Championship back three with Pearson and Tom Lees. So, yeah, I was expecting them to maybe be involved in a relegation battle. Obviously, Lewis O'Brien's been holding it together so well from the centre of the park. It would be interesting to see maybe in hindsight where they would be if he left in the summer transfer window. I think some of the players like Jonathan Hogg maybe wouldn't be thriving just as much as they are without him accompanying them in there. So credit's got to go to Carlos Corberán. It was a tricky first season last term, flirting around the relegation places for a lot of it and struggling really defensively in particular. So I think Huddersfield have definitely overachieved at the start of the season, but their performances do suggest that they could be flirting in and around those playoff places for a longer time. Also, one player that I thought maybe could do even better and play a more integral role is Josh Koroma, and he's been in and out of the side, really. We've seen Danny Ward leading the line of late, maybe not a striker that I can see pushing the Terriers towards the top six of the division. So a variety of reasons why I didn't think they'd be in the playoff conversation at this time, but fair play to them for doing it.
Absolutely, Marcus. Obviously, you sort of touched on the transfer business there, and I think what a fair few of us felt that the transfer business perhaps didn't suit the sort of system we'd imagined that Carlos Corberán would be playing. Corberán, obviously came from Leeds, a fairly, there were parts of the football community very excited to see what he was going to do, but I think a lot of non-believers in a sense, and he got a fair bit of criticism, but you think he's proving the doubters wrong this season?
Definitely. I think he's being a bit more flexible in his ideas. You see how strong Huddersfield have been from set pieces in particular, the likes of Pearson and Lees being very dangerous. That shows an adaptability, I think, that Corberán knows he's not going to be able to play the style of play that he was able to sort of contribute to achieving it with Leeds United. So with Huddersfield, he knows that the squad isn't going to be able to attain the philosophy that he'd like to implement maybe in the short term. So with the chances of them possibly having relegation fears as they did last season, he's really adapted well and focused on different areas and is getting the best out of the players at his disposal at the moment.
Absolutely. Well, that's Huddersfield Town as Marcus's selection for the Championship club that are overachieving. And we'll come to Toby's next. And it's someone that Toby, another name that I think is a shock name in the sort of playoff conversation at the moment. And that's Blackpool. Why have you gone for them?
Yeah, as you say, I don't think, I certainly didn't, and I don't think many people will have sort of expected them to be in that sort of playoff mix come this far into the season. Almost we're over a third of the way through now, and still only a point off the playoffs, which is obviously coming up from League One last season. It's not something you perhaps expect. You look at that first campaign back for a club such as Blackpool after 6 years away, you maybe think, it's a season for them to target consolidation and just avoiding relegation, giving themselves a chance to sort of re-establish in the second tier. And obviously they came up through the playoffs as well, so they had less time to prepare for this season than anyone else because of how late they finished in comparison to the regular campaigns for the rest of the teams. And so with all that in mind, I think they've done really well to get to where they are. I think obviously you were always going to sort of associate Blackpool with maybe relying on Jerry Yates. And I mean, obviously they've done a brilliant job, not just to keep him, but I think they secured him to a new contract either towards the back end of last season or during the summer. So with doing that, they've done some great business there, keeping him there. But obviously it's not just been him. Shane Lavery's come in from the Northern Irish division. So, I mean, you look at where he's coming from, there was maybe questions about whether he might be able to make that step across to the Championship, but he's matched Yates for goals so far. So the fact that they've got someone else to do that is really important, especially after Ellis Sims went back to Everton following his loan last season. So they've adapted really well to the Championship and probably better than many expected. So that's why I've gone for Blackpool here.
Yeah, we talked about Corberan with Marcus there. Neil Critchley, I think the job he's doing has obviously been excellent, taking Blackpool up. And now, as you said, sort of having them a lot higher than anyone would have seen. Do you think he's someone we should expect to see linked with some bigger Championship roles at some point soon?
Potentially, yeah. I mean, as you say, he's sort of got Blackpool achieving above expectations, perhaps. And so if you're doing that, then you're always going to get linked with other jobs because teams are always looking sort of for managers who can set themselves forward, perhaps ones who, if they're in that situation where they maybe have to not lower as such, but to teams that might not have the financial strength to keep hold of a player or, in this case, a manager, which arguably Blackpool might not have in comparison to, say, a more established Championship team. I mean, whether or not any of those will find themselves in a position where they'll need Critchley is perhaps a different matter. But I think you do have to credit him as well. Obviously, he's sort of come through from working in the youth system at Liverpool, and that's potentially helped with this Blackpool side. He was working with young players there. Here, he's working with a squad that a lot of them haven't got a great deal of Championship experience. So perhaps that's something that suited his style almost. And you look at the results, he's made them hard to beat on the whole. I mean, there's only that derby win over Preston so far this season where they've won by a margin of more than one goal in the league, and that was only a 2-0. So he's just really made this Blackpool side a solid Championship team very quickly, and he deserves a lot of credit for that.
Absolutely. Well, that's Blackpool as Toby's pick for the Championship overachievers. And just a reminder, of course, if you're watching, to send in your suggestions and any comments on what we pick. Marcus, coming to you for your League One pick then. Who have you gone for in the third tier and why?
Yeah, a team that I thought would be in the thick of a relegation battle for probably all of the season is Cambridge United. Last season, they got automatically promoted from League Two. And I was kind of watching from the outside, just waiting for a moment when they would have a little blip and fall away from the automatic promotion race. With outstanding performances from Wes Hoolahan and Paul Mullin on a consistent basis, they were able to sustain that and get into League One under what could be classed as maybe a bit of a rookie manager in Mark Bonner, who's been at the club for a very long time, worked his way up through the youth ranks with the academy and now obviously at the helm and is performing really well as a League One manager. Cambridge are closer to the playoffs than they are the relegation zone, and we're well over a third of the way through the season now. They, of course, lost Paul Mullin. He was out of contract, ended up signing for Wrexham this summer. Kyle Noyle was also a big player, bombing on from right back, chipping in with plenty of assists last season. He went to Doncaster. So overall, looking at the squad, I was looking at a team who I thought probably wouldn't have held on for promotion in League Two, and thinking their squad's got worse heading into a season in League One. So with the strength of the sides in League One as well, I thought they'd definitely be fighting towards the bottom end. Currently sat just inside the top half in 12th, I think represents an outstanding start to the season. Mark Bonner deserves so much credit. One player that's been key to that's been Joe Ironside. Maybe Mullin took a bit too many of the headlines to decrease the appreciation of Ironside last season. He scored 14 goals in the league. He's already got half of that in less than half the season, 7 goals in League One so far this term. So I just think they've acclimatised to League One so much better than I expected. They had an interesting transfer window, brought some players in that maybe you wouldn't have thought were ready for the step up. The likes of James Brophy from Leyton Orient came in and has been performing really well, a real consistent figure for them in League One. So yeah, it's just that transition has been able to happen so quickly, which I wasn't expecting, and I thought they would be struggling a lot more than they have been. So yeah, Cambridge United, my overachieving side.
You touched upon it there, Marcus. Paul Mullin, a massive figure in terms of his goal return. I guess when you're expecting a team to be down at the bottom of the table, as I think we all were with Cambridge, those goals they're always going to be vital. And there wasn't necessarily that big name that came in to replace him. So just how impressed have you been by the job that Mark Bonner's done by sort of finding a way to replace such a huge figure as Paul Mullin?
Yeah, he must have had such a successful pre-season, because it hasn't really been. I mentioned Ironside scored 7 of their goals. I think they've scored 23 in the league. So that's not an enormous proportion of them still. And they have been conceding goals. It's not like they've shored it up totally. They have been scoring goals as well, which has enabled them to keep this sort of stable league position. So he's just been able to get the rest of the squad, the players who were the supporting cast to the likes of Paul Mullin last season, to raise their level. Really buy into his ideas for the step up. Obviously, looking at the managers in League One, Mark Bonner was hugely inexperienced compared to the most of them, but he clearly got all the players on side. There's a great mood around the club at the moment, and yeah, it's not a story that I was really expecting. And hopefully, that they can kick on and hopefully, maintain their third tier status and stay pushing around mid-table to save any anxiety in the supporters as we move towards the second half of the campaign.
Absolutely. I mean, I don't think you'll be alone, Marcus, in sort of being surprised by just how well Cambridge have done this season, and I guess just how well they've played. Coming to you then, Toby, you've gone for someone who impressed quite a lot of people in League One last season, but lost their manager. Why have you gone for MK Dons, and what's impressed you so much about them?
Yeah, I went for MK Dons, as you say here, because I think of the way they've coped with sort of the changes they've had in terms of losing key individuals, not just off the pitch, but on it as well. I mean, obviously, we all know Russell Martin moved on to go to Swansea. So that was obviously a huge sort of change for them, given the style of play that he'd implemented there. It was always going to be sort of a bit of a challenge perhaps for them to adapt to a new manager, possibly a new system. But then also you look at some of the players that they lost over the summer as well. There was some big turnover there as well. Obviously, Scott Fraser went to Ipswich, Cameron Jerome went to Luton. So that's their 2 top scorers from last season who moved on. Ethan Laird as well was brilliant for them on loan from Manchester United last season. He's obviously now on loan at Swansea with Martin. So there was a lot of change for MK Dons over the summer that they had to cope with, both in the managerial and the playing departments, but they've done so really well. And right now, they're pushing on from that. They were 13th in the end last season, the 5th at the minute. So they've sort of shown that even though they've had those changes to cope with, they've done so brilliantly and almost moved on from that in a way, in terms of forcing themselves into that playoff picture now.
Absolutely, and I think, Toby, some people suggested, I guess, when Liam Manning was brought in, that was sort of a risky appointment given, his lack of experience. But the board have really been proven right with that one so far, haven't they? Yeah,
definitely. I mean, you think there's always going to be a risk for a club when they bring in a manager such as Manning. I mean, I think you look at his record. He just had that one season in the Belgium second tier. Last season was his only previous managerial experience. So they were going to be taking a chance on him, but it's really paid off for them. And I mean, I covered them for Football League World when they played at Wigan towards the back end of last season. And Wigan, who at the time were sort of battling relegation with a bit of a makeshift squad after their issues, completely played them off the park, won it 3-0. But then last month I watched MK Dons at Wigan again, and MK Dons got a 2-1 win there against the Wigan side, who now, with the turnover they've had, are battling for promotion. So that sort of shows how far MK Dons have come in a way. And I mean, they were really solid that night. They impressed me a lot, and they definitely deserve that win. So that shows that they do merit being up there where they are in that promotion picture. And I think that's huge credit to them, given what they've had to cope with over the sort of the summer.
Absolutely. So certainly exciting times for MK Dons then, who are Toby's pick for the League One overachievers. Marcus obviously went with Cambridge United, and now finally we'll move to League Two. Well then, Marcus, we'll come to you first again. Into League Two, who's your pick and why have you gone for them?
Well, maybe I've been surprised by another sort of quote-unquote rookie manager in John Brady at Northampton Town. In 2018-19, the season after Northampton were relegated from League One the last time, they went on to finish 15th and then obviously built on that and got promoted in the playoffs in 1920. I was expecting more of the same. The squad churn was enormous. It's basically a whole new team. Made 5 signings from the Scottish football, which maybe meant that I wasn't as informed as I felt like it about knowing the strengths of these signings. But they've just really surprised me. They're 4th in the table, 2 points off of the automatic promotion places, when I thought it would be a real steady the ship and rebuild sort of campaign. But they've really been impressive. 7 of their 21 goals have been scored by defenders. So a third of their goals scored by defenders, and 9 of them have come from set pieces. So read into that what you will. I think it definitely means that they need to be creating chances from open play a little bit more if they're going to sustain it. But one of the things that has propped them up the table has been their defensive record. They've got the best defensive record in the league, I'd say. They're joint with Forest Green, conceding just 13 goals, but they've played 1 more game than Rovers. So, yeah, it's probably a little bit stronger. Mitch Pinnock and Sam Hoskins are huge players going forward. But, yeah, it was just more I was expecting a season of stabilising. But John Brady's clearly got all the players on side. And one massive coup for Northampton, particularly in the summer, was bringing in Colin Calderwood as assistant manager. He got a lot of credit for how solid Blackpool were last season. He sort of came in, I think, sort of maybe 10 games-ish into the season and really seemed to shore them up defensively. And then we all know what happened in the second half of the season with the Tangerines. It looks to be having a similar effect at Northampton, best defence in the division. So, yeah, this has come up and surprised me, but credit to John Brady. He's not someone that I looked down the League Two managers list and thought he'd be someone to be pushing for promotion this season.
Yeah, absolutely. Brady certainly sort of got the cobblers going, and as you said, Marcus, you know, that nine of their 21 goals from set pieces is really something that sort of jumped out to me. Obviously, you know, League Two perhaps notorious for just how useful it can be to be able to be direct like that, and the Cobblers were very direct last time that they were promoted to League One. There was, you know, they weren't ashamed under Keith Curle of being that sort of side, and it's key to their success again, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah. I think John Brady didn't really have to do a lot in terms of style of play to improve what the Cobblers fans were seeing under Keith Curle, particularly when it was going so wrong in League One. But no, it's been really impressive. I'd argue that League Two is probably the most evenly matched league of the 3 EFL divisions this season. So if you can maximise your chances from set pieces and even defending them, you're going to have a better chance of falling on the right side of those fine margins. A lot of Northampton's wins this season have been by a single goal. So that's clearly something that they've identified, and, you know, it's worked for them before. So there's no reason why they shouldn't try and utilise it again. It's a huge factor and deciding point in a lot of League Two fixtures. So fair play to Northampton for being so effective in that area of the game.
Brilliant. Yeah, so that's Northampton Town as Marcus' pick for League Two overachievers. And Toby, coming to you then, and it's someone who well, they're enjoying their first season in the EFL, aren't they?
Yeah, and well, they might be, because they've been really impressive. Sutton United, obviously, sort of Marcus went for a team who's come down. I've gone for one that have gone up with Sutton, and as you say, it's a first season in the Football League for them. So a bit like what I was saying with Blackpool, after a bit of time away from the Championship, you maybe look at it as a season to consolidate and sort of just establish themselves at that level, give themselves a foundation to build on moving forward. But right now, Sutton look like going beyond that. Obviously, they're just outside the playoffs on goal difference, so that's a big step up for them from where they were last season. And there's always going to be questions coming out of the National League whether they can make that step up. I mean, granted, they did have, and they did bring in some players with Football League experience, but not directly from the Football League. Over the summer, the vast majority of their signings look to be coming from sort of, as I say, the non-league. So that perhaps put a bit of pressure on them in terms of how they would adapt to Football League football for the first time, and they've done that really well. And you can't help but admire the way they've adapted to this League Two level.
Absolutely, and certainly one of those teams, Toby, that if they can maintain that playoff push, it would really be something of a fairy tale story in League Two, wouldn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. To sort of go from the National League side to doing that in their first season would be an incredible effort. But I mean, I sort of looking at the squad's record, they could do that. I mean, no player for Sutton has scored more than 3 league goals so far this season. So that just sort of shows how much of a sort of contribution they're getting from all their players. And if you are getting that, then you sort of get the feeling that they can push on. There's always going to be someone to step forward and make a key impact in a game, and that can be really important for results. It maybe takes the pressure off one player if everyone is playing their part from one time to the next, and that I can see that being a really good formula there, and one that can keep them in that sort of playoff mix throughout the season, perhaps.
Absolutely. So that's Sutton United as Toby's final pick, and our final pick for a League Two overachievers. Before we go, then, I'll just run back through our picks for the EFL clubs that are overachieving this season in the Championship. Marcus went with Huddersfield and Toby with Blackpool in League One. Marcus went for Cambridge United, and Toby went for MK Dons. And in League Two, Marcus's pick was Northampton Town, and of course, as we were just discussing, Toby's was Sutton United. Well, that's all from us. From me, Marcus, and Toby this morning, but we've still got lots to come on Football League World TV today at 2 p.m. We've got the Preston fan debate show where George Douglas and Sam Whedon will be discussing the club's 5 best strikers of all time. And then it's another debate show at 4 p.m. Sam Rourke is your host, and you'll be joined by Chris Thorpe and Billy Mully to discuss the top 3 goalkeepers in the Championship. So that's not one to be missed. Thanks, Marcus and Toby, for joining me, and thanks everyone for watching.